Buckle up, everyone, because today we're diving into one of the most incredible stories from the early days of Christianity. We're talking Book of Acts chapter 12. It's got political intrigue and religious persecution,
Oh, yeah.
prison breaks, even a touch of the miraculous. We've got ancient history texts and some theological interpretations ready to go, so we can uncover the hidden layers of this story.
It's a chapter that really grabs you right from the start. We're right in the heart of the action, with King Herod Agrippa I, ruler of Judea, and not exactly a fan of these new Christians.
But why do you think Herod went to such extremes targeting these early believers? I mean, executing James, the brother of John, that's a pretty bold move.
We got to think about the political landscape at the time. Herod.
Yeah.
He was in a tough spot, trying to balance expectations from Roman authorities and the demands of his Jewish subjects. Persecuting this new sect, these Christians, it might have been a calculated move to gain favor with certain factions and, solidify his power.
So it's more than just religious intolerance. It's about political maneuvering.
Exactly. And this power play intensifies when Herod sets his sights on Peter, one of the most prominent apostles. And what's interesting is the timing. He arrests Peter during the days of unleavened bread, a major Jewish festival.
That seems significant. Can you tell us more about the relevance of that topic?
Absolutely. The days of unleavened bread, they held deep religious and historical significance for the Jewish people. It was a time of remembrance, commemorating their exodus from Egypt. So by making this dramatic arrest during such a sensitive period, Herod's sending a message, it's calculated, to maximize the impact of his actions, both politically and symbolically.
Okay, so he's arrested Peter. But he doesn't just throw him in any ordinary jail, does he?
No, he does not.
The texts paint a pretty intense picture of Peter's imprisonment.
Yeah, they do. 4 squads of soldiers,
Oh.
chains, guards, the whole 9 yards. This scene is designed to emphasize just how inescapable Peter's situation seems. Herod clearly wanted to send a message. Defiance will be met with overwhelming force.
Talk about impossible odds. But while Peter is facing this dire situation, we're told that the church is fervently praying for his release. It really highlights the strength of their faith and the power of community, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's a recurring theme throughout the Book of Acts. This unwavering belief in prayer, even in the darkest moments, really speaks volumes about the early Christian spirit. Their commitment to communal prayer. It wasn't just about seeking divine intervention. It was about finding solace and strength in one another, reinforcing their bonds in the face of persecution.
And then, the night before, Herod plans to put Peter on public trial. The impossible happens. An angel appears. The cell is filled with light. Peter's chains fall off, and he's led past the guards, as if they can't even see him. It's hard to imagine being in Peter's shoes at that moment.
I know, right? The text describes Peter as initially thinking it's a vision. You can almost feel his disbelief, like his struggle to grasp the reality of what's happening. It reminds us that even in the midst of the extraordinary, our human minds, they need a moment to catch up.
It's not every day you get a personal visit from an angel. And the miracles don't stop there. As they approach the city gate, it swings open on its own, like it's guided by an unseen hand. It's like the whole world is conspiring to help Peter escape.
It's this cascade of events, each more unbelievable than the last, that really drives home the sense of divine intervention. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes when all hope seems lost, help can arrive in the most unexpected ways.
And then just as suddenly as he appeared, the angel leaves Peter standing there on the street alone. The text says he came to himself at that point. I imagine the reality of what just happened truly hit him then.
That phrase, came to himself, it's so powerful. It suggests a kind of awakening, a transition from bewilderment to understanding. He acknowledges God's role in his deliverance. And that realization, that must have been profound. So what does Peter do next? Well, he heads straight for a place of familiarity, Mary's house, the mother of John Mark, where his luck would have it. A prayer meeting is going on.
Or a prayer meeting. Of course. And this is where we encounter another fascinating character in the story, Rhoda, a servant girl at Mary's house. She hears Peter knocking at the gate, recognizes his voice.
And she's over the moon, rushing to tell everyone. But you can imagine their reaction.
They probably thought she was imagining things. They were praying for his release. But who actually expects a miraculous prison break?
Exactly. It shows just how bleak their outlook was. They had kind of resigned themselves to the likelihood of Peter's execution and their response to Rhoda, saying, it must be his angel. That gives us a glimpse into their beliefs about the afterlife.
It's like a window into their worldview, isn't it? The idea that a person's spirit could appear even after death. So there's Peter, knocking at the gate. And everyone inside thinks it's his ghost. It's kind of comical when you think about it.
Oh, it totally is. You can picture it. The frantic knocking, the debate inside. Rhoda insisting it's Peter, and the others are like, Rhoda, you're being silly.
Yeah.
Talk about dramatic irony.
Finally, they open the gate. And there he is, Peter. Flesh and blood, standing right there. What do you think that moment must have been like?
Oh, I bet it was a mix of shock, disbelief, and just overwhelming joy. Imagine the relief, the sense of wonder, the realization that their prayers were answered in the most extraordinary way. It's a moment that speaks to the power of faith and the unexpected ways hope can show up.
And, as always, Peter, ever practical, tells him to inform James and the others about what happened. Even amidst the chaos and joy, he's thinking about the community.
That's so true. He understood the importance of sharing this experience, not just as like a personal testimony, but as a message of hope, encouragement for the whole Christian community. It's a reminder that even in moments of personal triumph, you know the well-being of the group. It's still so important.
Meanwhile, back at the palace, Herod is not exactly celebrating. He's launched a full-scale search for Peter, and his frustration, it's mounting with every dead end.
His reaction says a lot about him, don't you think? Instead of accepting the inexplicable, he doubles down, tries to control everything. It's a classic example of how those in power react when something challenges their authority.
And he doesn't exactly handle this setback with grace. The text says he orders the execution of the guards, who were supposed to be watching Peter. Talk about a harsh punishment.
It's a chilling reminder of the brutal reality of life under Herod's rule. This was a man who demanded absolute obedience. He would not tolerate dissent, his actions. They weren't just about punishing negligence, they were about sending a message. Defy me, and you'll pay the price.
So we have Peter, miraculously freed, back among his people. And we have Herod, furious, lashing out at those around him. It's almost like a symbolic clash between good and evil, wouldn't you say?
It's a powerful contrast for sure. On the one hand, you have this growing Christian community, bounded by faith and love, experiencing divine intervention. And on the other hand, you have Herod, consumed by rage, clinging to his earthly power, ultimately powerless against forces he can't control.
And then the narrative takes an interesting turn. It shifts focus to Herod's conflict with the cities of Tyre and Sidon. What's the significance of this shift, do you think?
Well, it's more than just a random plot twist. It reminds us that this story isn't just about Peter's estate or the clash between Christianity and those in power. It's also about the political realities of the time, the complex web of alliances and rivalries that shaped Herod's reign.
So we're seeing Herod in a different light now. He's not just a persecutor of Christians, but a ruler, grappling with complex geopolitical challenges.
Exactly. Tyre and Sidon, they relied heavily on Herod's kingdom for their food supply, so they needed to find a way to appease him, to secure their economic interests. This conflict, it adds another layer to the narrative. It highlights the delicate balance of power in the region.
And how does Herod react to this diplomatic overture from Tyre and Sidon? We get a sense that he's quite enjoying being in a position of power.
We do. The text paints this vivid picture of Herod in all his royal splendor, addressing the people from his throne. He seems to relish the attention, the adulation, the affirmation of his authority.
And the crowd's reaction is telling too. They're so impressed by his speech that they start shouting, "This is the voice of a god, not of a man."
That's the moment, isn't it? Where Herod's pride and ambition peak. Instead of correcting the crowd, acknowledging their praise is misplaced, he allows himself to be elevated to a level reserved for the divine.
And that's where it all goes wrong for Herod. He accepts their worship, fails to attribute his position to God, and the consequences are swift and severe.
The text tells us that an angel of the Lord strikes him down. It's a dramatic and gruesome punishment. For his hubris, you know it's a reminder that even the most powerful earthly rulers are ultimately subject to a higher power, a force that can bring them low in an instant.
And the description of his death, it's pretty graphic. Eaten by worms, not exactly the glorious end he probably envisioned for himself.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast to Peter's escape. Peter humbled, acknowledging God's power, walks free, while Herod, consumed by pride and self-importance, meets a pretty terrible end.
Yeah, it really highlights the different paths these two figures represent. Peter, despite his initial confusion and fear, ultimately surrenders to a power greater than himself. But Herod, he clings to his earthly authority, refuses to acknowledge any power higher than his own.
Yeah, and the consequences are clear.
Peter goes on to play a key role in spreading the Christian message, while Herod's reign, it ends in disgrace. and his name becomes synonymous with tyranny.
It reminds us that true power, it doesn't lie in political might or possessions, but in something much deeper. It's about recognizing that we're part of something larger than ourselves, something that transcends our individual ambitions and desires.
And even after all this turmoil and tragedy, the chapter ends on a hopeful note. The final verse says, "But the word of God grew and multiplied."
It's powerful, isn't it? Despite the persecution, despite losing James and imprisoning Peter, the Christian message not only survived, it thrived.
It suggests that trying to suppress faith, to silence those who hold different beliefs, it ultimately backfires. The more you try to extinguish it, the stronger it gets.
Absolutely. It speaks to the power of ideas, the enduring nature of faith, and the resilience of those who believe in something greater than themselves.
So what can we take away from this deep dive into Acts chapter 12? It's a story full of action, suspense, even the miraculous. But it also raises some profound questions about faith, power, and the unexpected ways life unfolds.
It reminds us that even when facing huge challenges, when we feel trapped or powerless, there's always hope. It might come as a literal angel or a sudden change of events, but more often, it comes from within, from that unwavering belief that something greater is at work, guiding us, supporting us, even when we can't see it.
It makes you think about those moments in your own life, doesn't it? Those times when things suddenly shift, unexpected doors open, an impossible situation resolves itself. Have you ever experienced something like that? Something that felt like divine intervention or a stroke of incredible luck?
Maybe a chance encounter that led to a new opportunity, or a sudden burst of strength that helped you overcome an obstacle. Maybe even a simple act of kindness from a stranger that restored your faith in humanity.
We often chalk these things up to coincidence or luck. But what if there's more to it? What if these seemingly random things are actually subtle nudges, guiding us towards our purpose, supporting us along the way?
It's an interesting thought, isn't it? It asks us to look beyond the surface and consider the possibility of a guiding hand, a force that connects us all, in ways we might not fully grasp.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive. From political intrigue to daring escapes, from fervent prayers to divine retribution, this one chapter has it all.
It's a perfect example of the early Christian experience, the challenges, the unwavering faith, and the miraculous ways their beliefs shaped their world.
And it leaves us with a powerful message of hope and resilience, reminding us that even in the darkest times, when all hope seems lost, something extraordinary might be right around the corner. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the mysteries that surround us.